Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Eddie Marcus once again. Today is Sunday. Normally, I have a presentation for you much earlier than this. And it's a little strange that I'm coming as late as I am, but I call myself going to a church this morning for the purpose they have Sunday school. And usually you get a chance to express some of your ideas and some of your understandings of truth when you're having a discussion like that. I have no problem with that. My problem usually is sitting down and listening to somebody tell you something that they read or their interpretation of something, and you have no chance to ask any questions or say anything. You just sit there and listen for as long as they go. So this was a little different, must say. Got to Sunday school. We had a wonderful time in our discussion. But what I'm talking to you about this particular time, ladies and gentlemen, I was lying in the bed last night and I was awakened by a minister preaching to his congregation, and he was talking about love. And it's amazing how sometimes you hear people say some things that doesn't make any sense to you, and you want to say something. You want to see if you have a clear version of it. And so as he was sitting there talking about this love, this wonderful thing about love, and how people should love each other, and how they should care about each other, and how love should not be predicated based upon what someone has done for you or won't do for you, or the expression that goes, I love you if you, or I love you when you do this, or how you do this, all those different kind of things. He's basically trying to set it up so that love didn't require anything except an outgoing of compassion and that which you yourselves would want others to give to you. So in any given situation, whether it's a good situation or a bad situation, and I have no problem with that. But sometimes when they start talking about Jesus and Jesus' love, that's what gets me a little confused there, because I haven't been given that understanding that Jesus died for my sins. And he loved me, and because he loved me, he died so that I could be forgiven for all of my sins. I'm sure many of you have had questions with that, except unless you've been indoctrinated from your youth. If you have, you got no question with that. You just accept that as fact. And so today there was somebody who had a different understanding, somebody who had a different indoctrination. And when people were trying to say this, what I was saying about Jesus dying for your sins and stuff like this, they had a little problem with it. And when, as Christians will do, they are the righteous ones. They are the ones who know best, and everybody else got to submit to Christianity as it is written in the Bible. And so when they try to make that point, the other party just got up and walked out of church, took their kids. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to be indoctrinated with that, something that they don't believe. Anyway, let me just back up a little bit. I got a little bit ahead of myself. I did that because I want you to stay around and listen. Now, we have been taught that God is love. Now, I am an agent for God because God has proven that God is real, that God exists. Even though I can't see, touch, or feel, the evidence is there. And because of the way I was brought into the light of God, it was through an expression of love for me. And I saw that as God is love because of the love that was shared to me. And I have no understanding of God any other way but love. Now, I understand people and their love, well, you know what their love is representative of. But anyway, they say that Jesus is love. Jesus is love. And I'm going to talk about that for a minute here. But they also say that the prodigal son's father was an expression of love. He allowed the son to go out on his own, hated it, knew that the son was a little bit misled. That's why he wanted to go out there. But he allowed him to go. And I'll kind of mention a little bit about that when I come back. And I also think about the times that Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and people like that who were standing up for righteousness' sake, standing up for what was best, not only for some people, but for the rest of the people. and they end up losing their lives for that, which to me also was an expression of love. Now, if I back that up a little bit, when we say Jesus, my friend, is love, we say God is love. We have an understanding, we don't know if it's true or not, but the word teaches that the angels represented love. That didn't make any difference. Up in heaven, we're taught that Lucifer, jealous, has such a big mind based upon what his responsibilities were in heaven, until he just got big-headed and felt that he could do more for the angels than God. And he wanted to be God, or if he couldn't be God, at least be equal to God. And so he started doing what the adversary always do. It's not the same thing that another does, it's opposite. And apparently it had some effect on the angels there. But God wasn't going for that. The God who made heaven, who made angels, wasn't going to let some knucklehead come around and say, I know better. So the story tells us that this Lucifer was kicked out of heaven. And they also say almost a third of the host of heaven was kicked out with him. Doesn't that kind of make you think about a third of the host of heaven was kicked out with him? Now we got somebody in the White House that most people, at least 2/3 of the nation, think is as evil can be. And yet, a third of the nation follows him. Isn't that something? That's amazing. I just thought I'd throw that out there with you. So we know that even God, with his love, has some requirements, has some restrictions, some boundaries that you have to work within. So nobody argues about that. So then we go to Jesus. You say that Jesus is the Son of God, which means that every human being is a son of God. You and I, just like Jesus, Son of God. Now we say that Jesus came here, what was it? Born of a virgin. And a lot of people take issue with that. It really doesn't make any difference. But they say he did. He was. And he went through life, they said he was sinless. I don't know why they say that. He said none was good but God. So if he said none was good but God, that meant he had done some things that were not so good. But you know, humankind, they just make up their mind, and once they do that, you might as well be quiet. Jesus is not only didn't do anything wrong, they tell you that Jesus is God. Because he said he was one with the Father, meaning that what the Father does, he understands, and that's what he is about. He ain't trying to be God. He just wants to take care of God's business as he was designed to do, but they say he was God. Anyway, this thing goes that Jesus lived in such a way. He was anti-system, and he was anti the indoctrination that the Pharisees and Sadducees were trying to impose upon the people. And he stood up against it. To make a long story short, they didn't like it. The system didn't like it because it was operational in such a way that it destroyed the power. It broke the chains that the system had imposed upon the people through their particular indoctrination. And people were breaking away free and didn't want to listen. They were saying, I can see through that. No, I'm not going that way. And so Caesar, the powers that be, said, well, we gotta tear down this. And you can imagine how the Pharisees felt. They were reaping a good little life before Jesus came and started drawing some attention to the darkness that they represented. And so they were pissed too. So you got the church pissed, and you got the government pissed, and they just come together and say, we got to get rid of this turkey. And so what they did is they got rid of the turkey. They hung him on a tree. Now the people, my friends, they didn't defend Jesus. They, according to the story, I don't know if they did or didn't, but according to the story, they were just sitting there watching, and like most of us do. We see people go to jail who didn't commit crimes. We saw people that even some people get killed. I mean, the electric chair or some of the poison that they do to take a person's life, and only to find out later that these people were innocent. However, the masses of the people just stood back and watched this. They stood back and said it's a shame, but what did they do? They just watched it, making sure that they want to make sure they avoid that so they don't have to go through that. But anyway, they say the story goes that Jesus, when he was hanging on the tree, a couple other guys were there. One was saying, well, my, if you're all you say that you are, and I'm paraphrasing it, if you're all that you say that you are, and if it's true, come down off that cross and get us down from here. I mean, show your stuff. And another one saying, well, I know who you are. I believe exactly what was taught. And I just say that when you get wherever you're going, please remember me. Now, that was a different plea than the other guy's plea. So one supposedly was accepted and the other one wasn't. Now, when you think about Jesus sitting up there dying, and he asked the Father, Father, please forgive them. They got me up here. I didn't do anything wrong, not to deserve this, but here I am. But don't hold it against them. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Now, who was he talking to? He was talking to a God who kicked what? A God who kicked Lucifer out of heaven for violating, for doing something that was contrary to the way of love. He also kicked Adam and Eve out of the garden for what? In violation of the order, doing something that was contrary to the way of love. Also, my friends, it's told that even outside in what we would call the world, he kicked Cain out from amongst the community for doing what he was doing, violation of the ways of love. Now that tells you that God ain't going for that. You violate love, you getting kicked out. And if Jesus was as close to God as people know, have been taught that he is, then Jesus would not be praying to God to let the crooks back in heaven, to forgive them and let them back in heaven. No. He wouldn't be doing that. You think about that. Now, if you think that you're going to get up in there and all the sin you're doing and don't change your way, you are disagreeing with everything I say, and I know that. But this is the way it goes. Now you got the prodigal son. Well, before I get to the prodigal son, let me go to Martin Luther King and Malcolm and those guys. Now, they saw some evils. Now, I'm not saying they recognized all evil in the world. They might have. But they identified some of the evils. And they stood up for what was right. They did the same identical thing Jesus did. For those of you who believe in Jesus, I recognize a lot of folks don't believe in Jesus. To me, it doesn't make a difference. The story is just as good as the individual. So, Martin and Malcolm and so many others that I can't identify and don't have time to if I could, they did the same thing. They stood up for what was right. And just like the people stood by and allowed Jesus to be killed, they allowed these brothers to be killed. Now, they did give Martin the name of some streets and some buildings and some schools and a statue in Washington, but what he represented, that didn't happen. People did get some rights to vote, but only to find out that really the vote didn't mean anything, because by the time it came around, they had upped the game. And so they had a different way of oppressing that which was supposed to do some good. So you see, we got Jesus and brothers and sisters who are doing right, and they stand against the system, and what happens to them? They are murdered. And it's left upon the rest of the people to make a decision about what they are going to do. Well, in one story, we have the story about the prodigal son. Now, the father, as I indicated, Knew that the son was going to run against all kinds of stuff, just like parents do. Parents know when most of their kids get ready to leave the house, they're not ready to deal with the system out there, even though you've done your best in many instances, not all instances, to bring them up in a way that they could master the stuff. But yet and still, you know, even if they were brought up that way, they're going to run up and bust their heads against some walls. And even though you want them to go out and grow up, you kind of hate to see them go out and grow up. But for the prodigal son, this guy went out there with some strange motivations. He took all that was his cut of the family fortune. Whatever the family had, it was kind of ours, as the story goes. So, Dad, give me my cut, because I'm going out there. I can do better with my cut than you are doing with it. Sounds like Lucifer. I can do better. So the father says, okay, you take your cut and you go head on. So the son goes on out there in the world. Then to make a long story short, he fell so far from what was truth. He fell so far from what was right until he found himself, they say, eating out of the trough with pigs. Now, those of you who've been around farms, you know how the farmer feeds the hogs. They got the slop, a whole mixture of stuff, food that's been thrown away, or some wheat or some seeds or something that they've been concocted together to call feed, and they throw it in this trough, and the hogs just in there having a good time, And this boy had found himself, when he got hungry, he was out there pushing the pigs to the side. Get over. Let me have some. And while doing that, he said, wait a minute now. My father's house was greater than this. I never would find myself doing stuff like this. So he came to an awareness. He faced the truth. He said, the way that I came from is the way that, I might not have liked it, but it worked. And nobody up there is doing anything like this. But me on my own, coming away from the teachings that I was engaged in, here's where I found myself. Oh, brother, I'm going back home. This stuff is crazy. So he decided to go back home. Now, if he had to go down some hills to get down to the trough, going back home might have seemed easy, some of you might think. But it's not easy. When you've gotten weak, you've been broken down, and you got to go back that same old road that you travel. You don't know how many people you made fun of on your way down. You don't know how you might have disrespected individuals and systems and ways when you were coming down. Now you got to go back through that. You better be careful what you do while you live, because you might have to answer for it. Anyway, he went back. And the story goes that his father looked and saw him coming back and was as happy as he could be. Brought him back, accepted him into the fold, and even rewarded him more at that moment in time, just for the jubilation that he had gone down and saw the darkness and chosen the truth and came back and rewarded him almost doubly. So that basically is a way that you get as far as how it would get you, the people who are trying to get to heaven, would get you back to God. You had to change your way. Because you left because you were a rotten apple that was thrown from the bushel. And no way anybody's going to say, forgive him. No way anyone's going to say, well, I died my life for them so their sins can be forgiven. No. You're not getting up there until you recognize the truth. That's why a lot of people believe in reincarnation. Because they know a lot of people dying, and they don't understand nothing about love. And so rather than get pitched down in hell, like the books say, and some interpretations say, you get a chance to recycle. And each time you come back through life, you learn a little bit. Sometimes you might learn a little less, but you keep recycling yourself because of God's love that would allow you to get back in the bushel without being rotten. So here we got this situation where people are saying that Jesus died so that you wouldn't have to, keep on sinning, but they know you're going to keep on sinning, so they're going to let you back into the bushel. Now, how many of you think that makes sense? But it's a good way to trick you. It's a good way for someone to tell you that, especially the one that's telling you that, are not going to change their way. They know they haven't changed their way. And if they're working for the devil, they're going to trick you to make you think you don't have to change your way. In other words, all of the sin and all the evil things that's been going around that you have been participating in and not complaining about, now you can keep on doing it because you can do what you want to do because somebody else has died and excused all the things that you are going to do and have done and will enable you to go back into heaven anyway. Now, doesn't that just sound like the devil trying to trick somebody? Just tricking you. Now you can do whatever you want to do. I heard somebody say, well, I don't believe there's a God. He said, well, if you don't believe there's a God, then that means that all things are permissible. There are no moral codes for anything. You can just do anything you want if there's no God. And if there's a law that's designed by humankind to prevent you from doing anything like that, then what in the heck would make you think that the creator of the universe and of you would not require at least the same? So what the challenge is for you, my friends, every last one of us. I can say America for sure. It's been some crookedness in our lives ever since we've been here on the face of the earth. We've seen it everywhere. We've seen small expressions of love that was predicated based upon your race, your family, just those that you wanted to help when you couldn't stand others. So I guess this message of love, life of victory eternal, that I have been speaking to you about is this, ladies and gentlemen. That truth be known. All white people, as good as you can possibly be, and you know you are not good, one of the main requirements that you're going to have to do to be expressive of your understanding of love is that you're going to have to love black people. People that you have kept in bondage. People that you have been able to benefit from. People that, my friends, that you have been able to be separated from the hard things of life because they went through for you. And you know how you were told that black people were no good. And you know how you accepted that. And all of a sudden, you recognize that there's no heaven for you unless you love them. Black people, same way. You know how white people have oppressed you. You know the kind of bondage they've thrown you in, the chains they've done on you, hanging you in trees, burning you up, separating your families, making your females have their kids. All of these kinds of things. And if you think that you're going to get up into heaven, you're going to have to love them. Yes, you are going to have to love them. This is required. And when we look at the system, for those of you who are black and like white people anyway, and those of you who are white and like those of you who are black and like white people in a way, and those of you who are the reverse, who are white and like black people in a way, you might think you've escaped. No, you have not escaped. Because here's another thing. Here is what love does. Love is the author of creation of humanity and this earth. And in order for you to express that love, you got to make sure that all of those wonderful things that God designed from the beginning that would keep everybody in receipt of those benefits, you got to make sure that they're met. In other words, no poverty, no crime, no violence. Why? Because it's replaced with peace and freedom and prosperity and the happiness of life and the fulfillment of dreams. And in order for that to happen, you got to treat one another a certain kind of way. That is the expression of your love. And if anybody is falling short of that, whether they are hurting somebody else or there's somebody that's being hurt by that, that means love has not been fulfilled. And depending upon the role that you played in that process determines whether you are still a rotten apple or whether you have got your stuff together. So I heard the dog barking, and it must mean somebody trying to get back up in the house. And so I think and hope I've said enough that would kind of give you an indication of where I'm coming from. And it might stimulate you to go within yourself, not trying to listen to me, but go within yourself and search your own self to see where you fall in this category. And maybe identify what you must do in order to bring the peace to you that allows you to feel comfortable that God is okay with you. So I want to thank you once again for giving me this your time. This is Eddie Marcus, and the subject matter has been love. Till next time, bye-bye.